Aha, the moment you've been waiting for, introduction to the integers. So up until this point, we've been dealing with whole numbers, right? We've been dealing with 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. Now all of a sudden, notice that signed numbers, negative numbers, are going to come onto the scene. So when you think about the number line, okay, obviously zero's here. Your positive numbers are here, as indicated, and your negative numbers are back here below 0, negative numbers. So all of a sudden, notice what our set of integers looks like. We've got 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on up, but now we've got -1, -2, -3 on down. Notice, big note to self, no decimals, no fractions. So we're still not dealing with fractions or decimals. That'll come later. Okay? So let's focus. What I mean is, in the past videos, we've done order of operations on whole numbers. Our goal is to get to order of operations on signed numbers as well, but we have some preliminary work. Also notice the number 0 is neither positive nor negative. Okay, before we try to do order of operations on signed numbers, there's some basics that we need to cover. We say that -5 is less than -3. And we write -5 is less than -3, symbolically, right? Remember that symbol, less than, is less than. Notice that -5 is to the left of -3 on the number line. So if you are a visual person, you say, okay, -5 is further away from 0, right, to the left, further to the left than -3. So that's how you know -5 is less than -3. That's how you pick that symbol. I personally like to, when I'm comparing integers, okay, I like to just think about money. Would you rather be $5 in debt? Think about negatives where they're used in the real world. Below 0 temperatures, below 0 altitude, below sea level. Debt, those are some very common areas where you see negatives in the real world. So, would you rather be $5 in debt, or would you rather be $3 in debt? Well, if you have -5 in your bank account, that's worse than having -$3 in your bank account. They're both bad, but -5 is less money than -3, right? So if you just think about money, chances are you'll get the right relationship. So, you ready? Fill in the blank with the correct symbol. So fill in the blank with a less than or a greater than symbol. -14 blank -8. And hopefully you thought less than, right? -14 is less than -8. You'd have less money in your bank account. And if it helps you when you're first learning that symbol, just write a sentence, is less than, and then put the symbol in. Let's try again. -8 blank -12. Well, -8 is bigger than, is more than. So what I always do is I actually write the words is more than or is greater than -12. If you have -8 in your account, it's bad, but it's not as bad as having -12 in your account, right, in terms of money. So -8 is some more money than -12. So more than, boom, this symbol. So you have to memorize the symbols. Okay? All right, let's try again. As we go through these guided notes, I'm going to actually expand this a little bit. Absolute value. Reminders on absolute value. If it's been a while since you've seen, symbolically, sorry, the pen's being fussy, the absolute value of A, those bars, right? The absolute value of a number is the number's distance from 0 on the number line. And the symbol for absolute value is those bars, right? So the absolute value of 2 is 2 because it's 2 units from 0 on the number line. So, 2 units away. 2 is 2 units away from 0. But the absolute value of -2 is also 2 because -2 is also 2 units away from 0. Okay? So absolute value is just the positive distance from 0. It's that simple. So let's just practice to make sure. Like, in other words, the bars don't turn things opposite. They turn things positive, right? So evaluate absolute value of negative 4. Well, that's going to be 4. And what's the absolute value of negative 10,000? Well, that's going to be 10,000. And what's the absolute value of 3,500? Well, it's going to stay positive, 3,500. Now this one's tricky. Notice that it says evaluate negative bar, negative 3, n bar. So take it in baby steps, right? What's the absolute value of negative 3? Well, that's clearly 3. But now there's a negative floating out front, so what do? Just record. So you're actually going to arrive at negative 3. Okay? So that negative there is outside the bar, so just drop it down and record. So you arrive at negative 3. We're going to see more about that in the near future. So reminder on opposites. Two numbers that are the same distance from 0 but are on either side, opposite sides of 0, are called opposites. So for example, negative 5 and positive 5 are opposites because they're on opposite sides of 0 but equidistant from 0. Okay, so knowing that, you can actually read negative as meaning like the opposite of. So for example, it says to evaluate negative 3. Well, think about this. Think about taking this negative sign here and reading it as opposite. Well, then you could read this as what's the opposite of negative 3? Aha, positive 3. So then you start to say, you could read this as negative 3. You could read this as not 3. Or the proper way would be to say if you negate negative 3, or if you take the opposite of negative 3, you send yourself to positive 3. Okay? Let's try again. These get tricky because people sometimes have a tough time, tracking their negative signs. Now this one here, it has a lot of negative signs. There's 4 of them in all if you count it. So I'm going to rewrite it. Negative, 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 negative 2. So let's just translate, okay? This is mean the opposite, all right, and do it phase by phase. So the opposite of negative 2 is going to send me to positive 2. But then I have this one, and I still have this one to drop down and take care of. Well, then you say, now you have the opposite of negative 2, which is going to send you to positive 2. So final answer on this one comes to be positive 2. But notice the pattern recognition. 1, 2, 3, 4. Aha! Even number of negative signs returns a positive value. Even here, right? 1, 2. There were 2 negative signs. Even number returns a positive value. All right? Now, I call this the not rule. I mentioned it a moment ago. So this one here you want to devote to heart. I call it the not rule. If I'm not going to the party, it's like a double, then I'm going to the party, right? So 2 negatives sort of cancel each other out and equal a positive, right? It's like the negation of A. So if A is a number, then the opposite of negative A is going to send you back to A. So just think of that as negative A equals A. Okay, that's going to pop up a lot. You ready? Here we go. Let's practice some comparisons. Let me enlarge this one if I can. And I'll scoot this one down and enlarge that as well. Okay, so let's practice. We want to insert a less than, a greater than, or an equal to symbol. All right, but notice these are bars, absolute value, right? So the absolute value of negative 7 is 7. But the negative on the outside here stays, drops down and stays. So we've got negative 7, blank. Here, you've got that, I call it the not rule, right? The double negative. because notice those aren't bars, those are parentheses, right? So negative negative 7, the opposite of negative 7, that's going to send you to 7. All right, so now we arrive at negative 7 blank 7. Well, let's write a sentence. It's clearly less than. Now let's write a symbol. Boom. So final answer, less than. Let's try it again. With this example here, you can read this as the opposite, right? So you've got the opposite of negative 3, which is going to send you to 3. But then you've got this negative out here that's going to follow along. So now you have negative 3 blank. Here, the absolute value of negative 8 is 8. But you've got that negative on the outside that's going to follow along. Ah, now you got to think about it. Negative 3 blank negative 8. Well, $3 in debt is better off, is more money, than $8 in debt. Think about the money. Now we make a sentence. Negative 3 is more than, or is greater than, negative 8. And boom, we put in the symbol for greater than. You got it. So I'm just talking that through in baby steps, okay? Ooh, and wow, that was it. That was it for our guided notes. We hope to do more practice with order of operations in the upcoming videos. Good luck out there.